Everyone has that one moment. That moment where everything changes. A conversation that cut too deep. A loss that shook your world. A betrayal that left you questioning who you could ever trust again. For some, it was the night you couldn't sleep, staring at the ceiling, replaying every mistake in your mind. For others, it was the morning you opened a message that shattered your heart. And for many, it was that silence after you prayed and prayed, but no answer ever came. You remember that moment, the way your chest felt heavy, the way your thoughts screamed, "Why me? Why this? Why now?" The way you were convinced that God had cursed you. But what if you were wrong? What if what you thought was a curse was actually a gift in disguise? What if the pain you tried to run from was the very tool God placed in your hands? What if the wound that almost broke you was the weapon that was meant to carry you? Because here's the truth, your pain was never a curse. Your pain was never punishment. Your pain was the beginning of transformation. Think about it. Every scar you carry tells a story. Every tear you've cried watered a seed of strength you couldn't see at the time. Every closed door redirected you to a path you would have never chosen on your own. And every betrayal that made you question your worth also carved wisdom and resilience deep inside your soul. In the moment, you couldn't see it. All you felt was the weight. All you knew was the silence. All you believed was that you were abandoned. But you weren't. The fire you went through was not there to consume you. It was there to refine you. The pain that cut you was not meant to destroy you. It was meant to sharpen you. The season of weakness you hated was the very space where strength was being born. Listen carefully. The struggles you faced were not the ending of your story. They were the forge, the place where raw metal is heated, hammered, and shaped into something unbreakable. Every loss was heat. Every delay was pressure. Every unanswered prayer was another strike of the hammer. Every night you felt forgotten was another moment of shaping. And all of it was preparation. That's why you're still here. That's why you didn't quit, even when you thought you would. That's why the weight you carried didn't crush you. It carved you. So what if the very thing you thought disqualified you was the very thing that prepared you? What if the thing you begged God to take away was the thing He knew you would need most? What if the pain you wanted to escape was the tool that would make you unstoppable? Because you were not cursed, you were being crafted. You were being armed. You were being made into someone who could endure, someone who could inspire, someone who could lift others when they thought they couldn't stand. Stay with me, because what I'm about to share will change the way you see every failure, every heartbreak, and every unanswered prayer. You are going to see that your pain was never wasted. Your suffering was never random, and your scars were never shameful. They were part of the plan. They were part of the preparation. They were the exact proof that God was working, even when you couldn't feel Him. And when you finally see it, you'll never look at your past the same way again. So let me ask you, what if the thing that tried to bury you was actually planting you? What if the season that felt like death was actually the soil of your rebirth? What if the tears you cried were not evidence of weakness, but evidence of the seed God was watering? Because that's the truth. You weren't cursed, you were planted. And planted things grow. You thought you were finished, but you were just getting started. You thought it was the end, but it was only the beginning. You thought it was punishment, but it was preparation. Remember this line and let it echo inside of you. It wasn't a curse. It was a weapon. The pain you felt was the sharpening. The silence you endured was the strengthening. The waiting you hated was the aligning. And now you are stronger than you have ever been. So don't run from the memory of your pain, embrace it. Don't bury the scars you carry, remember them. Don't despise the wounds you suffered, because they are proof that you were chosen to be more than you thought you were. Your pain was never a curse. Your pain was the weapon God gave you, and today you're going to learn how to wield it. There is a kind of collapse that no one notices. Not the dramatic kind where the world sees you fall, but the quiet kind, the kind that happens behind closed doors when no one is watching. You know what I mean? You smile in public. You laugh when people expect you to. You tell everyone you're fine, but deep down you know you're not fine, because inside you are carrying a storm no one else can hear. It starts small, a single disappointment, a single betrayal. a single closed door. You tell yourself you'll recover, you'll push through, you'll keep going. And for a while you do, but then comes the next hit, and then another, and another, until one day you look in the mirror and you don't even recognize the person staring back at you. Because somewhere between the promises and the pain, between the dreams and the delays, you started to believe the whisper. You weren't enough. Those words stick, don't they? It doesn't take a paragraph to break a person. Sometimes all it takes is a single sentence. And for some of you, it wasn't even a sentence. It was a look. That look of disappointment in someone's eyes. That unspoken judgment that made you feel small. That silent measuring of your worth where you always came up short. Maybe it was a friend you trusted, someone you opened your soul to, someone you believed would stand with you through everything. But one day you woke up and they were gone. No explanation, no closure, just absence. In their silence you heard the lie louder than ever. You weren't enough to stay for. Or maybe it was family, the people who were supposed to believe in you first. But instead of cheering you on, they doubted you. They reminded you of your failures. They compared you to someone else. And no matter what you achieved, it never seemed to measure up. Or maybe it was life itself. An opportunity you prepared for, prayed for, worked for, only to watch it slip away at the last second. The door that looked so promising slammed in your face. And you stood there asking, God, what more could I have done? Wasn't I enough for this one thing? The quiet collapse isn't the fall itself. It's the slow erosion of confidence. It's the moment you stop expecting good things to happen. It's when you no longer pray with faith, you just pray with habit. It's when hope feels dangerous, because you've been let down too many times before. And here's the dangerous part: the longer you carry those wounds in silence, the more you begin to confuse them with identity. You stop saying, I failed, and you start saying, I am a failure. You start saying, they left me, and you start saying, I am unworthy of love. You stop saying, that door closed, and you start saying, I will never walk through any door. That is the enemy's strategy to turn moments into identity, pain into permanence, betrayal into definition. And the most dangerous lie of all is this one: you were cursed. But listen to me. That is not who you are. That is not what God said over you. That is not the truth of your story. The people who left you, they were not meant to walk with you into your next chapter. The doors that closed, they were not meant to contain you. The betrayals that cut you, they were not curses, they were chisels. Because a curse ends things, but a chisel shapes things. And that's what your pain was doing all along, shaping you, refining you, sharpening you into something stronger than you ever imagined. I know the nights you carried it all in silence. The nights when your pillow caught tears no one else would ever see. The nights when your thoughts screamed louder than your prayers. And the nights when you looked at your reflection and asked, God, if I'm not cursed, then why does it hurt this much? But here's the truth: it hurt because you were being shaped. It hurt because you were being prepared. It hurt because God was carving into you the strength you would need later. And even though you didn't feel it, you were not abandoned in those moments. He was closer than you realized, closer than the pain, closer than the betrayal, closer than the silence. Your pain was not a curse. It was the sound of metal striking metal. It was the shaping of a weapon. It was the proof that something greater was being formed inside you. And though the world whispered, you're not enough, heaven was declaring, you are chosen. You are being armed. You are being prepared. If betrayal cuts deep, waiting bleeds slow. It isn't one sharp moment of pain. It's the slow grind of days turning into weeks, weeks into months, months into years, and still nothing. You know the feeling. You've prayed until your words felt empty. You've tried until your strength gave out. You've hoped until hope itself felt like a cruel trick. And still the door stayed shut. Still the call never came. Still the prayer seemed unanswered. Delay is its own kind of suffering. Because when life stalls, when progress halts, when nothing changes, your mind doesn't just sit quietly, it runs wild. It whispers questions you can't silence. Did I miss my chance? Did God forget me? Did I make a mistake so big it canceled my future? Waiting twists your heart. It makes every success around you feel like a reminder of your failure. It makes every celebration sting like salt in a wound. It makes you scroll through other people's breakthroughs and wonder why yours hasn't come. And then the voice of the enemy slips in again, telling you that delay is proof of disqualification. That silence is proof of abandonment. That waiting is proof you've been cursed. You begin to doubt yourself. Maybe you're not as gifted as you thought. Maybe you're not as strong as you believed. Maybe you're not as loved as you hoped. And the longer the silence drags on, the heavier the weight becomes. Because silence is not neutral. It speaks, and often it speaks the loudest lies. You know what it's like to pray and feel like your words bounced back from the ceiling. You know what it's like to beg for an answer, only to be met with nothing but stillness. You know what it's like to carry a dream in your heart that feels like it's rotting instead of growing. And so you sit in the middle of delay, in the middle of silence, and you start to wonder, maybe I was wrong. Maybe the vision wasn't from God. Maybe I made it up. Maybe I wasted years chasing nothing. But here's what you didn't realize. Delay is not denial. Silence is not absence. Waiting is not wasted. God's timing is not cruelty. Its silence you hated was not a curse. It was a classroom. The delay you despised was not abandonment. It was alignment. Think about it. If you had been given what you wanted when you wanted it, would you have been ready? Would you have been strong enough to carry it? Would you have had the character to protect it? So often we want the blessing without the backbone, the crown without the weight, the reward without the refinement. But God loves you too much to hand you something your hands aren't ready to hold. And that is why He makes you wait. Waiting is not proof of weakness. It is proof of worth. Because only valuable things are prepared with such care. Gold doesn't sit on the surface. It is hidden deep in the earth, waiting to be discovered. Diamonds don't form overnight. They are pressed for years under unbearable weight. Steel doesn't emerge perfect. It is beaten and burned until it becomes unbreakable. So why would your calling be any different? Why would your destiny arrive without process? Why would your weapon be forged without fire? The silence you hated was never meant to break you. It was meant to teach you, to strip away the noise, to tune your ears to a voice you can only hear in stillness. Because when everything else is stripped away, when the doors stay closed, when the friends walk away, when the opportunities vanish, that is when you learn to hear Him in the quiet. That is when you realize His presence was never gone. That is when you discover that what looked like silence was actually preparation. So no, you were not cursed in the waiting. You were being prepared for wait. You were being trained for the blessing. You were being aligned with something bigger than you imagined. And while the enemy tried to convince you that the silence meant you were abandoned, heaven was whispering the exact opposite. You are not forgotten. You are not overlooked. You are not late. You are right on time. The weight of delay is heavy, but it is not hopeless. The silence is painful, but it is not empty. Every unanswered prayer you carried was not ignored, it was stored. Every dream you thought was dead was not gone, it was planted. Every tear you cried in waiting was not wasted, it was watering. And one day, the seed that was buried in the soil of delay will break the ground. It will rise, it will bloom, it will bear fruit. And when it does, you will see that the waiting was worth it. Your pain was not a curse. Your waiting was not punishment. Your silence was not abandonment. It was all part of the forging. It was all part of the weapon being shaped inside you. And though it felt unbearable at the time, you will look back and realize the weight you carried in waiting was the very thing that made you strong enough to lift what God was preparing to give you. There comes a point when the weight becomes too much, when betrayal, delay, and silence pile so high that you finally break. Not the kind of break others can see, but the kind of break that shatters you on the inside. You know that breaking point. The moment you dropped to your knees, not in prayer, but in exhaustion. The moment you stopped asking why and simply whispered, I can't do this anymore. The moment you looked at your own life and thought, if this is all it will ever be, I don't want it. That's the breaking point. The place where dreams turn to dust. The place where faith feels like fiction. The place where you wonder if God is even listening. You prayed, but heaven was silent. You begged, but nothing changed. You cried, but the world kept moving. And in that silence, a thought began to grow. Maybe God isn't real, or maybe he is, but he doesn't care about me. It's a terrifying thought, because it shakes the very foundation you were standing on. Faith is supposed to be your anchor. But what do you do when even faith feels flimsy? What do you do when the God you trusted feels absent? What do you do when the scriptures you quoted feel hollow in your mouth? That is the tension of faith. It's not easy belief when everything is going right. It's holding on when everything is falling apart. It's clinging to a promise you cannot see, cannot hear, cannot feel. And that is where many people give up. They assume silence means absence. They assume waiting means rejection. They assume pain means punishment. And they walk away from the very God who was closest in that moment. But here's what you didn't know then. What you couldn't have seen at the time. God does some of his deepest work in the silence. He does some of his greatest shaping in the waiting. He does some of his strongest refining at the breaking point. Because when you are stripped of everything else, when the support system is gone, when the opportunities are gone, when the certainty is gone, that's when you discover the only foundation that cannot be shaken. Sometimes God allows you to reach the breaking point not to destroy you, but to destroy the illusions you were holding on to. The illusion that you were strong enough on your own. The illusion that you didn't need him. The illusion that comfort was proof of his presence. Because comfort is not proof of God, presence is. And his presence doesn't always come with comfort. Sometimes it comes with silence. Sometimes it comes with fire. Sometimes it comes with breaking. And here's the mystery: the breaking point is not the end. It is the beginning of becoming unbreakable. Think about it. A seed must break before it can grow. The earth must break before it can release harvest. Even your heart, when it breaks, it makes room for more love, more compassion, more resilience than before. So your breaking point was not your burial. It was your planting. You were not cursed. You were being positioned. You were not abandoned. You were being aligned. But I know it didn't feel like that in the moment. It felt like the end. It felt like God had turned away. It felt like your prayers bounced back unheard. And yet, here you are, still breathing, still standing, still listening. Which means your breaking point did not break you completely. It revealed something inside you that could not be destroyed. Something God placed in you long before the pain ever arrived. Something the betrayal could not erase. Something the silence could not cancel. Something the delay could not kill. That something is resilience. That something is strength. That something is the weapon forged in the very moments you thought you were cursed, because your breaking point wasn't the proof that you were weak. It was the evidence that you could endure more than you ever imagined. It was the fire that revealed your true core. It was the place where your pain turned into power. And when you look back one day, you will not remember only the betrayal. You will not remember only the silence. You will not remember only the breaking. You will remember that you endured. You will remember that you rose. You will remember that you carried on when everything told you to quit. And that memory, that testimony, will become the weapon in your hand. A weapon not just for you, but for everyone who watches you, everyone who listens to you, everyone who sees your scars and finds hope in their own. Your pain was never a curse. Your breaking point was never your burial. It was the forge. It was the chisel. It was the shaping. It was the weapon being placed in your hands. So don't despise the breaking. Don't curse the silence. Don't hate the waiting, because all of it has been working for you, not against you. And one day you will look back and say with confidence, what I thought would end me was the very thing that equipped me. There is a kind of collapse that no one talks about. Not the loud kind that makes headlines. Not the public kind where everyone gathers around to see what went wrong. No, I'm talking about the collapse that happens in silence. The kind you carry alone. The kind that hides behind forced smiles and the words, I'm fine. You know it well. It's when the people around you think you're strong, but inside you're crumbling. It's when you keep showing up, but every step feels heavier than the last. It's when your laughter becomes a mask and your silence becomes your only safe place. At first, it doesn't happen all at once. It starts small. One disappointment, one betrayal, one door closing. You tell yourself it's nothing. You'll recover. You'll get up. You'll push through. And for a while, you do. But then another hit comes, and then another and another, until eventually the weight is too much, and your soul begins to break in places no one else can see. And then come the words that stick to you like chains. Maybe someone said them out loud, "You weren't enough." Or maybe they were spoken in a quieter way, through a look, a comparison, an absence that screamed louder than words. And suddenly, those two words, "not enough," become a sentence that you carry like a curse. It doesn't take a long speech to break a heart. Sometimes all it takes is a single line. And once it's spoken, it echoes endlessly inside your head. You replay it, you question it, you start to believe it. And the longer you believe it, the heavier it becomes. Maybe it came from someone you trusted, a friend who promised to stand with you, but disappeared when you needed them most. Maybe it came from family, the people who should have been your greatest supporters, but instead became your greatest critics. Maybe it came from life itself, when the opportunity you worked for slipped through your hands, when the dream you prayed for never arrived, when the door you knocked on stayed shut, and suddenly you begin to hear the same message everywhere: you weren't enough. The quiet collapse doesn't always look like falling. Sometimes it looks like functioning. You're still going to work, you're still caring for people, you're still showing up, but deep down, you've stopped expecting anything good to happen. You've stopped believing things could change. You've stopped praying with faith. You just pray with habit. And here's where the danger comes in. The longer you carry those words in silence, the more they become part of you. At first, you say, "I failed," but slowly it becomes, "I am a failure." At first, you say, "They left me," but slowly it becomes, "I am unworthy of love." At first, you say, "That door closed," but slowly it becomes, "No door will ever open for me." That's how the enemy works. He doesn't just want to wound you. He wants to redefine you. He doesn't just want to hurt your heart. He wants to rewrite your identity. He wants you to believe that your pain was proof of your curse. But listen carefully. That's not the truth. Your betrayal was not your definition. Your rejection was not your identity. Your disappointment was not your destiny. Yes, they left, but their leaving does not mean you are unworthy. Yes, the door closed, but that door was not big enough to hold what's coming next. Yes, you were betrayed, but betrayal is not the end. It's the tool God uses to carve wisdom, strength, and resilience into your soul. You see, there's a difference between a curse and a chisel. A curse is meant to end you, but a chisel is meant to shape you. And all along, what you thought was a curse was actually the chisel in the hand of God, shaping you into something stronger. Think about it. If the people who left you had stayed, maybe you would have depended on them instead of learning how to depend on God. If the opportunities you lost had opened, maybe you would have settled for something smaller than what was meant for you. If the betrayal had never happened, maybe you wouldn't have built the boundaries that protect your soul today. It hurts, I know it does, but pain is not proof of a curse. It's proof that something is being shaped inside of you. You may not have seen it at the time. All you saw was loss. All you felt was emptiness. All you heard was silence. But in the silence, God was carving. In the emptiness, God was shaping. In the loss, God was building something greater. Your pain was never a curse. Your collapse was never the end. Your betrayal was never the proof that you were unworthy. It was the forging. It was the refining. It was the beginning of a weapon being formed in you. So even though those words, "not enough," echoed in your mind for years, they were never heaven's words. Heaven's word over you has always been chosen, called, strong, equipped. The world said you were cursed. God said you were being crafted. And that, my friend, is why you're still here. If betrayal wounds the heart, delay drains the soul. It is not one sharp strike, but the slow weight of time pressing down on you. It's the waiting that makes you question everything you ever believed. You know what I mean. You prayed, but nothing happened. You tried, but doors stayed closed. You worked, but the results never came. You hoped, but hope began to feel dangerous, almost foolish. And then days turned into weeks, weeks turned into months, months turned into years. And still, no change. That is when the whispers grow loud. If it hasn't happened by now, maybe it never will. If God hasn't answered by now, maybe he won't. If life hasn't moved by now, maybe you're cursed to stay here forever. Delay is heavy because it doesn't just test your patience. It tests your identity. It makes you wonder if you're doing something wrong. It makes you question if you missed your chance. It makes you fear that you've been forgotten by both heaven and earth. And silence. Silence is even louder, because silence has a voice of its own. It tells you you're invisible, you're overlooked, you're forgotten. You know the ache of silence. It's when you pray with all your heart and you hear nothing back. It's when you beg God for a sign and the sky stays empty. It's when you pour out tears and it feels like the heavens are shut. And in that silence, you start to wonder if you ever really heard God in the first place. Was it His promise or just your imagination? Was it His calling or just your wishful thinking? Was it His timing or just your mistake? Delay convinces you that you are late. Silence convinces you that you are forgotten. And together they weigh on your soul until you feel crushed under the burden. But listen carefully, delay is not denial. Silence is not absence. Waiting is not wasted. You have to see it differently. If God had answered when you wanted, would you have been ready? Would you have had the maturity to carry the weight of the blessing? Would you have had the wisdom to protect it from being stolen? We think waiting means God is punishing us, but waiting often means God is protecting us from rushing into something before we're ready, protecting us from carrying something that would crush us, protecting us from walking into a season we don't yet have the strength to survive. Waiting is not proof that you are weak. Waiting is proof that you are worth preparing. Think of gold. It doesn't sit on the surface for anyone to grab. It's hidden deep in the earth, protected until it's ready to be revealed. Think of diamonds. They don't appear overnight. They are formed through years of pressure. Think of steel. It is not born strong. It is beaten, bent, and burned until it cannot be broken. And so it is with you. Your calling is not cheap. Your destiny is not shallow. Your purpose is not weak, and that is why the process takes time. The silence you hated was not punishment, it was training. The delay you despised was not rejection, it was alignment. The waiting you thought was wasted was the very thing that was strengthening your spirit. Because in the silence, you learn to listen differently. When there are no voices cheering you on, you learn to hear the still, small whisper inside your heart. When there are no answers coming, you learn to trust the one who holds the answers. When nothing changes around you, you discover the change God is making within you. That's the power of waiting. It forces you to grow roots before you grow branches. It builds foundations before it builds heights. It creates character before it creates crowns. So no, you were not cursed in the delay. You were not abandoned in the silence. You were not being punished in the waiting. You were being prepared. You were being trained. You were being made strong enough to carry what was coming, and when the time comes, and it will come, everything will make sense. The tears will make sense. The silence will make sense. The waiting will make sense, because you will realize that none of it was wasted. Every unanswered prayer was not ignored. It was stored. Every delayed promise was not denied. It was reserved. Every moment of silence was not empty. It was full of unseen work. So hold on a little longer. Do not despise the silence. Do not curse the waiting. Do not give up in the delay, because in the very place you thought you were forgotten, you are being remembered. In the very season you thought was wasted, you are being prepared. In the very silence you thought meant absence, you are being aligned. Your pain is not a curse. Your waiting is not wasted. Your silence is not the end. It is the proof that God is still working in the unseen. It is the evidence that you are still being shaped. It is the reminder that weapons take time to forge, and you, my friend, are a weapon in the making. There comes a moment when the weight is too much, when betrayal has drained you, delay has exhausted you, and silence has hollowed you out. That is the breaking point. The breaking point doesn't arrive with a warning. It creeps in after too many sleepless nights, after too many unanswered prayers, after too many disappointments. It's the moment you sit alone and whisper, I can't do this anymore. Not because you don't want to believe, but because you've run out of strength to hold on. You've been there. On your knees, not in reverence, but in defeat. Eyes swollen from tears that never seem to dry. mouth empty of words because you've prayed the same prayer so many times you no longer believe it has power. That is the breaking point. When faith feels like fiction, when hope feels like cruelty, when God feels distant and his silence feels like abandonment, you ask yourself, if God loves me, why doesn't he speak? If he's with me, why do I feel so alone? If he has a plan, why does my life feel like chaos? Those questions haunt you. They echo through your mind until doubt feels louder than truth. And in those moments, the enemy whispers his favorite lie. See, you really are cursed. If God cared, he wouldn't let you hurt this way. That's when faith feels hardest, because it's easy to believe when prayers are answered. It's easy to trust when doors are opening. It's easy to worship when blessings are flowing. But true faith is not built in easy seasons. True faith is forged in fire. True faith is tested at the breaking point. True faith is proven when all you have left is a whisper. Even if I can't see him, I'll still hold on. The breaking point is dangerous because it makes you want to quit. It convinces you that silence means absence. It persuades you that waiting means rejection. It tricks you into believing that pain means punishment. And right when you are closest to breakthrough, you are most tempted to walk away. But listen to me, the breaking point is not your burial. It is your planting. Seeds cannot grow unless they break. The shell must crack open before new life can emerge. And your breaking point was never meant to destroy you. It was meant to release the growth inside of you. Think about it. When your heart broke, it made room for deeper compassion. When your strength gave out, it forced you to lean on a strength greater than your own. When your dreams crumbled, it gave God space to rebuild something stronger. The breaking point is not proof that you are weak. It is proof that you were carrying more than human strength could bear. And in that moment, God was not absent. He was closer than ever, holding you even when you couldn't feel him. Sometimes God allows you to reach the breaking point because he knows it is the only way to strip away false strength. The illusion that you can do it all alone. The illusion that success will satisfy you. The illusion that comfort is proof of his presence. Because comfort is not proof, presence is. And his presence doesn't always come wrapped in comfort. Sometimes it comes wrapped in silence. Sometimes it comes wrapped in fire. Sometimes it comes wrapped in breaking. But even in the breaking, he is there. Even in the silence, he is speaking in ways you cannot hear yet. Even in the delay, he is aligning pieces you cannot see yet. Your breaking point is not the end of your story. It is the beginning of your strength. It is the moment your pain transforms into power. It is the place where curses dissolve into weapons. You may not realize it yet, but surviving that breaking point was proof of something incredible. That there is a core inside you that cannot be destroyed. Betrayal couldn't erase it. Delay couldn't crush it. Silence couldn't cancel it. Even despair couldn't kill it. That core is resilience. That core is strength. That core is the weapon God has been forging in you all along. So do not despise the breaking. Do not mistake it for the end. Because one day you will look back and see it for what it truly was. The place where you were refined. The place where you discovered God's strength inside your weakness. The place where you became unbreakable. And when you share your story, others will see your scars, not as proof of defeat, but as proof of survival. Your scars will become someone else's hope. Your testimony will become someone else's lifeline. Your weapon will become someone else's shield. Remember this. Your breaking point was not a curse. It was the forge. It was the fire. It was the hammer striking steel. And from it, you did not emerge weaker. You emerged sharper. The world may have said, "You're finished." But heaven declared, "You are just beginning." The enemy may have whispered, "You're cursed." But God was saying all along, "You are being armed." So hold on. Don't quit in the silence. Don't give up in the waiting. Don't walk away at the breaking point. Because what feels like the end is often the doorway to the beginning. What feels like abandonment is often the setup for alignment. And what feels like a curse is always the weapon being placed in your hands. There is a kind of collapse that no one sees. It doesn't happen in the open. It doesn't make noise. It doesn't draw a crowd. It happens in silence. It happens behind closed doors. It happens while you are smiling on the outside but breaking on the inside. You know it well. It's the collapse that doesn't announce itself. the kind you carry quietly because you're too tired to explain and too afraid no one would understand. So you keep saying, "I'm fine." You keep pretending, you keep showing up. But inside, you are unraveling piece by piece. It doesn't always start big. Sometimes it begins with something small. One disappointment, one rejection, one betrayal. You tell yourself you'll recover, you'll bounce back, and for a while you do. But then comes another, and another, and another. Until one day you wake up and you feel like a shell of yourself. You wonder when you stopped being whole. You wonder when the cracks became breaks. You wonder how you managed to fall apart without anyone noticing. And then come the words, the ones you never asked to hear but can't forget. Maybe someone said them straight to your face. You weren't enough. Or maybe they said them in their absence, in their abandonment, in their rejection. And those two words became a chain around your soul, not enough. It doesn't take much to destroy someone's confidence. It doesn't take a lifetime of cruelty. Sometimes it just takes a single sentence. A sentence that echoes every time you try to rise. A sentence that whispers every time you step forward. A sentence that convinces you that no matter what you do, you will never measure up. Maybe it was a friend. Someone who promised they'd always be there, but left when things got hard. Maybe it was family, the ones who should have been your greatest support, but became your greatest critics. Maybe it was life itself, the opportunity you worked for, prayed for, longed for, and yet it slipped through your fingers like sand. Everywhere you turned, the same message seemed to repeat itself. You weren't enough, and the more you heard it, the more you believed it. The more you believed it, the heavier you felt. The heavier you felt, the quieter you became. The quiet collapse doesn't always look like falling down. Sometimes it looks like functioning. You're still at work. You're still smiling at gatherings. You're still doing what's expected of you, but your heart isn't in it anymore. Your hope isn't alive anymore. Your dreams are fading in the background because you no longer believe they're possible. And then comes the danger. The longer you carry these words in silence, the more they turn into your identity. At first, you said, "I failed," but slowly it became, "I am a failure." At first, you said, "They left me," but slowly it became, "I must be unlovable." At first, you said, "That door closed," but slowly it became, "No door will ever open for me." This is how pain lies. This is how betrayal deceives you. This is how disappointment shapes your mind. It convinces you that what happened to you is who you are. It convinces you that your scars are your identity. It convinces you that your pain is proof you were cursed. But let me tell you, that's not the truth. Your betrayal is not your definition. Your rejection is not your identity. Your disappointment is not your destiny. Yes, people left you, but that does not mean you were unworthy of love. Yes, doors closed, but that does not mean your path has ended. Yes, you were betrayed, but betrayal is not a curse. It is a chisel, because curses are designed to end you, but chisels are designed to shape you. And all along, what you thought was a curse was actually the tool in God's hand, carving strength, resilience, and wisdom into your soul. If those people had stayed, maybe you would have depended on them instead of learning to depend on God. If those doors had opened, maybe you would have settled for something smaller than what you were meant for. If that betrayal had never happened, maybe you wouldn't have developed the boundaries that protect your heart today. I know it hurt. I know the pain was real. I know the silence was unbearable. But pain is not proof of a curse. It is proof that something was being shaped inside of you. You may not have seen it then. All you saw was loss. All you felt was emptiness. All you heard was silence. But while you thought you were breaking, God was building. While you thought you were cursed, God was crafting. While you thought you were finished, God was just beginning. Your pain was never a curse. Your collapse was never the end. Your betrayal was never the final word. It was the forge. It was the refining. It was the preparation. It was the beginning of a weapon being placed in your hands. So don't let those words, "not enough," define you anymore. They were never heaven's words. Heaven's words over you have always been chosen, called, strong, equipped. The world said you were cursed. God says you were crafted. And that is why you're still here. If betrayal cuts deep, delay bleeds slow. It's not one sharp wound. It's the steady, grinding weight of time. The waiting, the silence, the not knowing. You've felt it. That ache when you've prayed with all your heart, but nothing changed. That frustration when you've worked with all your strength, but the results never showed. That heaviness when you've hoped with everything in you, but the door stayed shut. And then the days stretched into weeks, the weeks into months, the months into years. And still, no answer, no breakthrough, no shift. That is when the questions begin. Did I miss my chance? Did God forget me? Did I do something wrong? Am I being punished? Delay is heavy because it doesn't just test your patience. It tests your identity. It makes you wonder if you were ever truly called. It makes you doubt if the dream you carried was even real. It makes you second guess everything you once believed with confidence. And silence can feel louder than words because silence speaks. And what it says can pierce your heart. It whispers, you are invisible, you are overlooked, you are forgotten. You know that silence. It's the silence after you pour your heart out in prayer and there's no reply. It's the silence when you beg for a sign and the sky stays empty. It's the silence when you knock on doors until your fists bleed and nothing opens. And in that silence lies echo. Maybe the vision was never real. Maybe the promise was just your imagination. Maybe the calling you thought you had was nothing more than a mistake. Delay convinces you that you are too late. Silence convinces you that you are forgotten. Together, they crush your soul until you start to believe that your story is over. But here's what you need to know: delay is not denial. Silence is not absence. Waiting is not wasted. God's timing is not cruel. It is perfect. And often, the silence you despise is the very classroom where your character is being built. The delay you hate is the very season where your strength is being forged. The waiting you can't stand is the very process shaping you for what's coming. Think about it. If God had given you what you asked for when you asked for it, would you have been ready? Would you have had the wisdom to protect it? Would you have had the maturity to carry it? Would you have had the strength to endure the weight of it? We want blessings without process. We want crowns without crosses. We want weapons without fire. But God loves us too much to hand us something that will destroy us. So he makes us wait. Waiting isn't proof of weakness. It's proof of value. Because only things of great worth are prepared with such care. Gold doesn't sit on the surface. It is buried deep, hidden until the right time. Diamonds don't form in a day. They are pressed for years under unimaginable weight. Steel isn't born strong. It is hammered, heated, and refined until it becomes unbreakable. Why would your destiny be any different? Why would your calling come without shaping? Why would your purpose arrive without preparation? The silence you hated was not empty. It was full. It was full of lessons, full of alignment, full of unseen work being done on your behalf. Because in silence, you learn to listen differently. When there are no voices cheering you on, you learn to hear the still, small whisper of God. When doors won't open, you learn that his presence is more valuable than opportunity. When nothing changes around you, you begin to notice the changes he is making within you. Waiting is not wasted when you allow it to prepare you. Waiting is where roots grow deep before branches stretch wide. Waiting is where foundations are built before heights are reached. Waiting is where character is forged before crowns are placed. So no, you were not cursed in the delay. You were not abandoned in the silence. You were not punished in the waiting. You were being prepared. You were being protected. You were being aligned with something greater than you imagined. And one day, when the waiting ends, you will see it clearly. The prayers that felt unanswered were never ignored. They were stored. The dreams that felt buried were never gone. They were planted. The tears you thought were wasted were never forgotten. They were watering the soil of your future. And when the moment comes, when the breakthrough arrives, you will see that it was never too late. You will see that you were never forgotten. You will see that the waiting was worth it. Because in the very place you thought you were being cursed, you were being crafted. In the very season you thought you were being punished, you were being prepared. And in the silence you thought meant absence, God was closer than ever. Your delay is not the end. Your silence is not your grave. Your waiting is not wasted. It is proof that you are still in his hands. It is proof that your story is still being written. It is proof that your pain is still being turned into a weapon. There comes a moment when the weight is no longer manageable, when the betrayals have piled too high, when the silence has lasted too long, when the delays have drained every ounce of strength from your body and every drop of hope from your soul. That is the breaking point. The breaking point doesn't look the same for everyone. For some, it's the night you collapse in tears, whispering, "God, I can't do this anymore." For others, it's the moment you stop praying altogether because it feels pointless. And for many, it's when you stop expecting anything good, because expectation only leads to disappointment. It's the place where hope feels cruel, where faith feels hollow, where the future feels empty. You've been there. That moment where your knees hit the floor, not in worship, but in defeat. Where your pillow became the only place you could pour out your grief. Where your heart cried, "If you're real, where are you? If you care, why don't you speak? If you're good, why does it hurt this much?" The silence is deafening at the breaking point. It makes you believe maybe you were wrong about everything. Maybe the dream wasn't real. Maybe the calling was a mistake. Maybe the promise you held on to was nothing more than wishful thinking. And in that silence, the enemy whispers his sharpest lie. "See, you really are cursed. If God cared, he wouldn't let you hurt like this. If he was with you, you wouldn't be here. If you mattered, he would have shown up by now." That lie is poison. It convinces you that your pain is proof of punishment. It convinces you that your delay is proof of abandonment. It convinces you that your silence is proof of a curse. And yet, here's the truth: the breaking point is not where God leaves you. The breaking point is often where he does his greatest work, because faith is not proven when life is easy. Faith is forged when everything is falling apart. Faith is tested when God feels far away, but you choose to believe anyway. Think of it this way: the seed must break before it can grow. The shell must split before new life can emerge. The soil must be torn apart before roots can push through. Your breaking point was not your burial. It was your planting. It was the place where something new was about to emerge. But I know it didn't feel like that in the moment. It felt like death. It felt like abandonment. It felt like failure. And yet, here you are, still standing, still breathing, still listening. That is proof. Proof that the breaking point did not destroy you. Proof that something inside you is stronger than the pain that tried to crush you. Proof that God was holding you, even when you couldn't feel it. Sometimes God allows the breaking point because it shatters the illusions we cling to. The illusion that we can do it all on our own. The illusion that success will make us whole. The illusion that comfort equals his presence. But comfort is not the proof of God. Presence is. And his presence doesn't always come in comfort. Sometimes it comes in silence. Sometimes it comes in fire. Sometimes it comes in breaking. And the breaking reveals something vital. It reveals that you are stronger than you knew. It reveals that your spirit is more resilient than you imagined. It reveals that even in silence, God is still with you. Because look closely, what survived your breaking point? Not everything broke. Not everything died. There is a core inside of you that remained unshaken, a resilience, a strength, a spark of faith that refused to die even when everything else collapsed. That core is the weapon God has been forging all along. The breaking point didn't erase it, it revealed it. The breaking point didn't curse you, it crafted you. The breaking point didn't end you, it equipped you. One day, you will look back at the very moment you thought would kill you and realize it was the place that made you unbreakable. You will remember the betrayal, but more than that, you will remember that you survived it. You will remember the silence, but more than that, you will remember the lessons it taught you. You will remember the breaking, but more than that, you will remember the strength you discovered within it. And that memory will become your testimony. That testimony will become your weapon. That weapon will not only protect you, it will empower others. Because your scars are not shameful. They are evidence. Evidence that you went through hell and came out stronger. Evidence that you carried pain and still rose again. Evidence that you were never cursed. You were crafted. So don't despise the breaking. Don't mistake it for the end. Don't let the enemy convince you that it was proof of abandonment. Because the breaking point is often the place where the greatest transformations happen, where curses turn into chisels, where pain turns into power, where faith grows roots so deep that nothing can shake it again. Your breaking point was not a curse. It was the forge. It was the fire. It was the hammer striking steel. And you did not emerge weaker. You emerged sharper. You emerged stronger. You emerged unbreakable. So let the world say, "You're finished." Heaven is already declaring, "You are just beginning." Let the enemy whisper, "You're cursed." God has been saying all along, "You are being armed." That's the truth of your breaking point. Not burial, but planting, not punishment, but preparation, not a curse, but a weapon. There comes a moment when something shifts inside you, a moment when the lies you've carried for years no longer sound convincing, a moment when you realize that what you thought was the end was actually the beginning. It doesn't happen all at once. It begins like a spark, a thought you never considered before. What if my pain wasn't punishment? What if it was preparation? At first, you fight it. You've spent so long believing the opposite. You've spent years hearing, "You're not enough." Years replaying betrayals, years waiting in silence. But something in you refuses to stay quiet anymore. Something inside whispers, "Look closer. What tried to break you actually built you." Think about it. The betrayal that shattered your trust also taught you discernment. The rejection that cut you down also built your resilience. The silence that scared you also sharpened your ears to hear what others can't. The waiting that felt endless also grew your patience, your humility, your endurance. What you thought disqualified you has been qualifying you all along. What you thought was weakness has been the training ground for strength. What you thought cursed you was secretly carving you into someone unstoppable. This is the awakening. The moment you stop asking, "Why did this happen to me?" and you start asking, "What was this shaping in me?" When you see it like that, everything changes. You realize your story isn't a story of curses. It's a story of crafting. You realize the pain didn't come to destroy you. It came to arm you. Because how can you inspire anyone if you've never been broken? How can you lead anyone if you've never been lost? How can you heal anyone if you've never known pain? The strongest voices are the ones who have walked through fire and lived to speak about it. The most powerful leaders are the ones who were once the most broken followers. The greatest healers are the ones who needed the deepest healing. That means your story isn't a shame, it's your strength. The very thing you thought would silence you is the very thing that will give you a voice. The very wounds you tried to hide are the very scars that will give hope to someone else. The very curse you thought was killing you has become the weapon you now carry. This is the shift. This is the turning of the tide. This is the moment the enemy loses his grip on your mind. Because now you see the truth. You are not cursed. You are called. You are not abandoned. You are equipped. You are not broken. You are being built. And when you realize that, the chains begin to fall, the lies lose their power, the whispers grow quiet, and a new strength begins to rise in you. Yes, you were betrayed, but you're still here. Yes, you were delayed, but you're still here. Yes, you were broken, but you're still here. And if you are still here, it means God is not finished. It means your story isn't over. It means your weapon is ready. Your pain was never a curse. It was always preparation. It was always the awakening of something greater. Every story has a turning point. That moment when what seemed like defeat suddenly reveals itself as the setup for victory. That moment when weakness begins to transform into strength. And here's the truth: your turning point begins the very moment you decide you will not waste your pain. For too long, you've carried the belief that your scars disqualified you. But scars don't disqualify you. They prove you survived. They are the evidence that the weapon formed against you did not win. They are the proof that what was meant to kill you only revealed your resilience. The turning point comes when you stop asking, "Why me?" and start declaring, "Watch me. Watch me rise after betrayal. Watch me walk after the fall. Watch me grow in the very soil where I was buried." This is when the tables turn. Because weakness is no longer your prison. It becomes your platform. Your struggle is no longer your shame. It becomes your story. Your pain is no longer your curse. It becomes your weapon. Think about it. David's victory over Goliath didn't come from a crown. It came from the lessons he learned alone in the field with nothing but a sling. Joseph's elevation to the palace didn't come in comfort. It came after betrayal, slavery, and prison. Even Jesus showed his scars after the resurrection, not to prove weakness, but to prove triumph. Your story follows the same pattern. Your sling is your pain. Your prison is your preparation. Your scars are your testimony. And that means what you thought was weakness was actually training. Every sleepless night strengthened your endurance. Every unanswered prayer deepened your dependence. Every rejection toughened your resolve. Weakness has a way of exposing your limits, but it also has a way of awakening a strength you didn't know you had. And once you find that strength, you become unstoppable. Because here's the truth: strength isn't the absence of struggle. Strength is born in struggle. Strength is the fire, tested, storm-beaten battle, proven courage that refuses to bow. This is the shift, the moment when your inner voice changes, when you no longer say, "I can't." You start saying, "I will." You no longer say, "I'm cursed." You start saying, "I'm chosen." You no longer say, "I'm broken." You start saying, "I'm being built." And that changes everything, because the greatest battles are won not with swords, but with mindsets. Not with weapons in your hand, but with fire in your heart. Not with perfect strength, but with a relentless spirit that refuses to quit. So don't despise your weakness. Don't run from your scars. Don't hide your tears. Because weakness isn't the end of your story, it's the beginning of your strength. The turning point comes when you realize that what once made you fall is now the reason you rise. The betrayal that hurt you gave you wisdom. The silence that haunted you gave you patience. The breaking point that almost destroyed you gave you unshakable resilience. And now you carry something greater than success. You carry endurance. You carry courage. You carry faith that has been tested in fire and proven unshakable. So let the world wonder how you're still standing. Let the enemy wonder why you're still fighting. Let the scars on your body and soul declare what your words cannot. I am stronger than what tried to break me. Your pain was not a curse. It was the turning point. It was the shift. It was the place where weakness gave birth to strength. This is the moment where everything changes. Not because the pain disappears, not because the scars vanish, but because you finally realize the truth. Your scars are your strength. For years you thought your pain cursed you, but now you see it was never a curse. It was a calling. You thought your wounds made you weak, but now you see they are the proof you survived. You thought the silence meant abandonment, but now you see it was training. This is empowerment. The moment you stop running from your past and start wielding it. Your pain is your weapon. Your tears are your testimony. Your scars are your authority. Think of it this way. A sword is not strong because it avoided fire. It is strong because it endured fire. It is sharp because it was struck over and over. It is unbreakable because it was tested under pressure. And you are the same. The fire you went through didn't consume you. It refined you. The hammer that struck you didn't shatter you. It shaped you. The silence that tested you didn't erase you. It aligned you. Now, every pain that once made you cry has become a weapon in your hands. Every disappointment that once broke your heart has become strength in your soul. Every breaking point that once left you on your knees has now become the platform from which you rise. You don't need to be ashamed of your scars anymore. They are not evidence of weakness. They are evidence of survival. They are not reminders of curses. They are reminders of victories. They are not marks of defeat. They are marks of resilience. So stand tall. Stand with your scars. Stand with your story. Because your scars are the very thing that will give others hope. There are people waiting to hear how you survived. There are people waiting to see that it's possible to rise again. There are people who will only believe in healing because they see it written on your life. And that is why you had to go through what you went through. Not because you were cursed, not because you were abandoned, but because you were chosen. Chosen to carry a story that will break chains. Chosen to hold a weapon that will fight battles, not just for you, but for those who come after you. So stop hiding your pain, stop burying your testimony, stop believing the lie that your story disqualifies you. Your story is your weapon, your scars are your crown, your pain is your proof. This is empowerment to stand in the very place where you once fell and declare, "This is where I rise," to hold the very weapon that was forged in your suffering and say, "This is what God used to arm me. to look the enemy in the eye and remind him, what you thought would destroy me has made me unstoppable. So take it. Take the weapon. Take the strength that was born in your struggle. Take the fire that was forged in your pain. Take the wisdom that was carved in your scars and use it, because you were never cursed. You were crafted. You were never abandoned. You were armed. You were never broken beyond repair. You were broken to be rebuilt stronger. This is your moment. This is your turning point. This is your empowerment. Rise now, not in spite of your scars, but because of them. Rise now, not in spite of your pain, but because it gave you strength. Rise now, not in fear of your past, but in power because of what it made you. Your pain was never a curse. It was the weapon God gave you. And now, it's time to wield it. This is the moment you realize the truth. The moment the lies that haunted you collapse under the weight of revelation. The moment your pain, your scars, your tears, all of it, suddenly makes sense. Your pain was never random. Your scars were never wasted. Your tears were never ignored. They were ingredients in the making of a warrior. Think about it. How do you know you are strong? Not because life was easy, but because life was hard and you're still here. How do you know you are resilient? Not because everything went smoothly, but because you were knocked down and you rose again. How do you know you have faith? Not because you saw miracles every day, but because you believed even when heaven was silent. Every scar on your heart is proof that you faced storms and lived, proof that you walked through fire and were not consumed, proof that what was designed to destroy you only made you unshakable. You see, the enemy thought the betrayal would break you, but it built you. The enemy thought the silence would silence you, but it trained you to hear God more clearly. The enemy thought the delay would destroy your hope, but it deepened your endurance. The very things designed to curse you are the very things God used to craft you. What was meant to bury you has only planted you. What was meant to weaken you has only strengthened you. What was meant to end you has only prepared you to begin again. This is the revelation. Your pain is not your prison. Your pain is your platform. Your scars are not your shame. Your scars are your strength. Your delays are not your defeats. Your delays are your development. And the moment you see this, everything shifts. You stop walking like a victim and start moving like a victor. You stop carrying your scars in silence and start wearing them like medals. You stop hiding your story and start telling it with fire. Because people don't need your perfection. They need your survival. They need to see that you went through the valley and came out stronger. They need to see that you faced darkness and still carry light. They need to see that your scars are not curses. They are proof that healing is possible. So lift your head, lift your voice, lift your spirit. Because you are not cursed, you are chosen. You are not abandoned, you are equipped. You are not broken, you are rebuilt stronger. This is not the end of your story. This is the chapter where the revelation becomes reality. This is the moment the pain transforms into power. This is the moment your weapon is revealed. And now you're ready to use it. There comes a moment when you stop explaining your pain. You stop apologizing for your scars. You stop shrinking under the weight of lies. This is that moment. This is the moment where you rise. This is the moment where you declare to every voice, every wound, every shadow, I am still here. Do you understand the power of those words? I am still here. After betrayal, after silence, after delays, after heartbreak, still here. And that means the enemy lost. If the pain had truly cursed you, you wouldn't be breathing right now. If the betrayal had truly ended you, you wouldn't be standing right now. If the silence had truly abandoned you, you wouldn't be listening right now. But you are, and that makes you dangerous, because now you carry a weapon the enemy can't steal. A weapon forged in fire. A weapon hammered by heartbreak, a weapon sharpened by silence, a weapon strengthened by delay. And with that weapon you declare, I will not quit, I will not bow, I will not be cursed, I will not be broken, I will not be forgotten, I will not be defeated. Say it again. I will not quit, I will not bow, I will not be cursed, I will not be broken, I will not be forgotten, I will not be defeated. Because this is not weakness anymore. This is strength, this is resilience. This is power rising from ashes. The world will ask, how are you still standing? And you'll answer, because I was forged in fire. The world will ask, how are you still smiling? And you'll answer, because I found joy that pain couldn't kill. The world will ask, how are you still fighting? And you'll answer, because I turned my curse into a weapon. You are not fragile, you are fire tested. You are not forgotten, you are favored. You are not cursed, you are crafted. So stand tall, stand unshaken, stand unbroken. Stand like someone who knows their pain was never wasted. Stand like someone who knows their scars are proof of survival. Stand like someone who knows their weapon is ready. Because the declaration is this: you cannot be stopped, you cannot be silenced, you cannot be cursed, you cannot be destroyed. Every attempt to break you has only built you. Every attempt to silence you has only amplified your voice. Every attempt to bury you has only planted you deeper. You are the living proof that what was meant for evil has been turned for good. You are the evidence that pain is not the end of the story. You are the reminder that scars shine brighter than curses. This is your declaration that you are stronger than the storm, that you are tougher than the trial, that you are louder than the silence, that you are greater than the betrayal, that you are the weapon God has forged. And once a weapon is forged, it cannot be unmade. The enemy thought your pain would silence you, but now your pain has become your voice. The enemy thought your scars would shame you, but now your scars are your testimony. The enemy thought your delay would destroy you, but now your delay has become your development. And the very things that once cut you down are the very things you now carry as weapons. Do you see the power in that? What once made you cry now makes you fight. What once made you doubt now makes you believe stronger. What once made you break now makes you unbreakable. This is the punchline: the curse has become your weapon, and now you're dangerous. Because the enemy no longer holds your past against you. You hold it against him. You throw it back in his face. You remind him of every time he tried to crush you and failed. You remind him of every time he thought you were finished and you rose again. You remind him of every night you wept and every morning you got up anyway. Every betrayal, every heartbreak, every silence, every delay, they are not curses anymore. They are ammunition, they are fuel. They are weapons in your hands. Now when you fight, you don't fight empty. You fight with the memory of what you've endured. You fight with the testimony of what you've survived. You fight with the scars that remind you, if I made it through that, I can make it through anything. And that is why you cannot be stopped, because your fight is not theoretical, it is personal. Your weapon is not plastic, it is forged steel. Your strength is not borrowed, it is blood earned. The enemy should have killed you when he had the chance, because now you are awake. Now you are armed. Now you are unshakable. This is the punchline. The very pain that once felt like your death sentence has become your war cry. The very silence that once haunted you has become your anthem. The very weakness that once broke you has become your strength. And now, you don't just survive battles, you win them. You don't just carry scars, you wield them. You don't just rise again, you rise higher than ever before. So lift your voice and declare it. What was meant to curse me has crafted me. What was meant to break me has built me. What was meant to silence me has strengthened me. What was meant to bury me has blessed me. What was meant to end me has empowered me. This is no longer the story of a victim. This is the story of a warrior. This is the anthem of someone who has discovered their weapon. This is the declaration of someone who will never again be defined by pain. Your pain was never a curse. It was always the weapon God gave you. And today, that weapon is in your hands, so use it. Use your story to inspire. Use your scars to heal others. Use your testimony to set captives free. Use your survival as a light in someone else's darkness. Because the punchline is this: the curse has become the weapon, and the weapon has made you unstoppable. After the fire comes the calm. After the storm comes the stillness. After the breaking comes the peace. And that is where you are now. Not because life has suddenly become perfect, but because you finally see the truth: your pain was never a curse. It was the weapon God placed in your hands. Every betrayal that once made you cry has become wisdom. Every delay that once made you restless has become strength. Every silence that once felt unbearable has taught you to listen differently. Every scar that once brought you shame has become your proof of survival. You no longer look at your past with fear. You look at it with gratitude, because you know now it was all preparation. The closed doors, the lonely nights, the broken trust. None of it was wasted. And that realization brings peace. Not the fragile kind that depends on circumstances, but the kind that says, even if life throws storms, I know I was built to withstand them. Even if silence lingers, I know I am never abandoned. Even if I face battles again, I know I already carry the weapon to fight them. That's the gift of your journey, clarity. You see now that your scars are not curses. They are stories, stories of endurance, stories of grace, stories that will give hope to someone else who feels like they are breaking. Because your story isn't just for you, it's for the ones coming after you, the ones who need to hear, you can survive this, you can rise again, you are not cursed, you are crafted. So breathe now, let the weight go, let the shame fall. You don't need to keep replaying the pain, you don't need to keep fearing the silence. You don't need to keep wondering if you're cursed. You are free. Free to walk forward. Free to rise stronger. Free to use your scars as proof that God never left you. And this is the takeaway: your pain was not wasted. Your scars are not shame. Your silence was not absence. Your delay was not denial. Your breaking was not your burial. It was all preparation. It was all crafting. It was all part of the weapon being placed in your hands. So move forward now, not as a victim but as a warrior, not as someone cursed but as someone chosen, not as someone broken but as someone built. Your pain was never a curse. It was always the weapon God gave you. And if this message spoke to you, don't let it end here. Someone else needs to hear these words. Someone else is carrying the same weight you carried. Someone else is on the edge of giving up, and your simple act of sharing could be the reason they hold on one more day. So share this. Let it be light for someone still walking in darkness. And if you're still here with me right now, that means something inside you is ready to rise. That means you know you weren't cursed, you were crafted. You weren't abandoned, you were armed. You weren't broken, you were built. Stay connected. Be part of this journey with me. Because this is more than just a video, it's a movement of people who refuse to stay down, who refuse to stay silent, who refuse to waste their pain. Subscribe if you haven't already, so you don't miss the next reminder of who you really are. Because every week we rise together. Every week we sharpen the weapons God has given us. Every week we remind each other that we are not victims. We are warriors. And as you step away from this moment, remember this one truth: your pain was never a curse. It was the weapon God gave you. So pick it up, use it, and never forget you are stronger than you know.